Hi, everyone here and around the world. 2 weeks ago, on March 20th, 2025, the Northern Hemisphere began moving into spring, while the Southern Hemisphere is moving into fall. And at that vernal equinox 2 weeks ago, some astonishing headlines emerged from Cairo, Egypt, and from Jerusalem, one of the oldest cities on Earth. The UK Daily Mail headlined on March 21st, 2025, quote, "Italian researchers claim to have uncovered a vast underground city which stretches more than 4,000 feet directly underneath the pyramids of Giza in Cairo, making the underground city 10 times larger than the pyramids themselves. The bombshell claim, which many experts have already tried to debunk, comes from a study that used radar pulses to create high-resolution images deep into the ground, beneath the structures, the same way sonar radar is used to map the depths of the ocean," close quote. And then the Jerusalem Post headlined a couple of days later on March 23rd and updated March 26th, 2025, quote, "Researchers say they used SAR, SAR, synthetic aperture radar, to find a vast city beneath the pyramids. The Italian researchers claim to have discovered, underneath the Khafre pyramid, 8 vertically aligned cylindrical structures arranged in 2 parallel rows from north to south and referred to as shafts, extending approximately 2,100 feet deep beneath the pyramids," close quote. Synthetic aperture radar, SAR, is a colorful 3-dimensional Doppler technique. The radar instrument sends out a pulse of energy and then records the amount of that energy reflected back after it interacts with Earth. It creates 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional colorful reconstructions of objects that are estimated to be approximately 2,100 feet deep beneath the Khafre pyramid, which is the middle pyramid of Giza, not the Cheops pyramid. This graphic illustration of the SAR data was also described as, quote, "huge structures discovered 2 kilometers below Pyramid of Khafre," close quote. This illustration of those large, deep underground cylindrical structures was released by 4 Italian scientists, Corrado Malanga, Armando May, Filippo Biondi, and Nicola Cicola. The scientists released their new findings from a SAR scan that shows 8 large cylindrical structures in an illustration here that are 2 kilometers or 648 meters straight down below the Khafre pyramid at Giza in Cairo, which is the middle pyramid between Pyramid Menkaure and the Pyramid of Cheops, also known as Khufu. The Great Sphinx of Giza, behind the Great Cheops Pyramid, and the middle Khafre Pyramid. So it's back there behind those 2 pyramids. The Italian scientists are focusing specifically on these underground vertical cylinder structures, 2,000 feet below the Khafre pyramid. And this work is part of the ongoing Khafre research project, which leverages advanced satellite technology to explore the Giza site's hidden underground architecture. Back around the world, in Washington, D.C., DefenseScoop on March 31st, 2025 reported, quote, "UAP disclosure advocates call for transparency on drone incursions." Lou Elizondo and Chris Mellon returned to the Hill last week for closed-door discussions with several lawmakers that included U.S. Representatives Anna Luna, Tim Burchett, and Eric Burleson. Lou Elizondo told the DefenseScoop reporter, quote, "It may turn out that some of these UAP are indeed new drones or some sort of adversarial technology that is flying completely unchallenged, like we saw over the CIA headquarters at Langley Air Force Base back in December 2024, which disrupted U.S. military flights, close quote. Lou Elizondo said, quote, "I'm confident that next steps are not only going to follow, but I think we're going to see potentially even more progress this year than we have seen in the last 7 years," close quote. If the Pentagon does not know for certain who controls the many unidentified drone sightings, another possibility are UFO extraterrestrial intelligences. And that's why Lou Elizondo told DefenseScoop that, quote, "drones are a subset of a bigger problem," close quote, which is a nice way to say there are still lots of unidentified moving objects in Earth's skies, and some of them might be extraterrestrial technology monitoring us humans on Earth. If any of you see what you think are very unusual drones in the night sky or the day sky, try to take photos and videos with a goal to send them back to Earthfiles, to here. And I'll show you more strange moving lights recorded from an airline captain flying at night recently. And he has sent me some to compare, and they are fascinating. But now, I would like to share with you now some of your fascinating chat comments from last week's March 26, 2025 Earthfiles broadcast about the question, after body death, does human consciousness live on in other dimensions? Let's start in the first chat at Michelle Tecklenburg 5950. Quote, "The spiritual realm is right around us. It's closer than you think." At Donna 9374, "Love you, Linda and Ian and all the Earthfiles listeners around the world. Wishing you all love and light." And from Deborah Brisky 4330, quote, "Hi, Linda and Ian. When I was 28 years old, my husband went to have a shower as I lay in bed, ready for sleep after a long day caring for my children and work. I closed my eyes to rest. The next second, my soul was floating above the cupboards near the ceiling of my room. I was up there viewing myself in bed, and I remember thinking, oh my God, I'm up here, but I'm down there too. Oh my God, there are two parts of me. I then saw my husband come into our room, walk around the bed, and touch me on the shoulder while asking me, 'Are you awake?' As soon as he touched me, my soul was in my body again. I was so excited and told him what had just happened to me. He believed me because I have had many amazing experiences in my life. But this one was the most peaceful and beautiful experience I have ever had. I will never forget it as long as I live. To me, it was proof that our bodies are separate from our souls. The soul, that is what I call the part of me that was looking down at myself. And I wasn't scared or afraid. I was in complete peace and beauty. Love to you from Australia." And here, Diana 6855, quote, "I think Plato's concepts of the soul speaks volumes. His works convey the soul as immortal and as an incorporeal entity that exists before birth and after death. It continues to have a thought process. He believed in the realms of forms and how our physical world, which is constantly changing and filled with imperfection, is only one reality. He theorized there is another non-physical reality in the higher dimensions where true knowledge is obtained." And then at AJQ, he wrote, quote, "Have you heard about the lokas from Hinduism? They are different planes of existence, universes, and realms. What if after we die, we incarnate in those kinds of worlds? And that was followed by Heartbeat 7 saying, quote, consciousness continues, but it is not human. We are not human. Human is a role we play, a costume we try on for life or many human lives. But we have not always been, nor will we always be, human. This current life may be our first or only time that we played human, or we may have identified as human for so long that we imagine that is who and what we are. However, we are so much more that needs to be experienced directly to understand, close quote. And then to Susan, F6D4I, quote, I am probably about your age, Linda. As a child, I had a number of these experiences. Lying in bed at night as a very young girl, I had an escape that I went up through the ceiling between two dormer windows and out to my favorite places, one alongside a waterway in the woods with a moss-covered rock ledge that felt like a place to live. And in first grade, sitting at my desk, I flew out the window to escape because of a teacher who constantly picked on me and punished me in front of the class. In third grade, while the teacher was talking, I was not there, but sitting in front of a fire with my tribe, squinting my eyes to keep the smoke out. The teacher interrupted me to ask why my eyes were closed, and I told her to keep the smoke out of my eyes. And next, Cynthia, quote, witnessed my mother's passing and saw her take her last breath. A little later, I heard my mother's voice in my head, not like conversationally, but as though she were in motion and very excited, like overjoyed. Cindy, you should see, you should see. I mentioned it to the others in the room and then dismissed it as though my mind was playing tricks on me. And since then, I have come to realize that she was actually speaking to me on her way to wherever she was going. And then jump to Misanthrope 7664, quote, I had an OBE, out-of-body experience when I was 19. I was sitting on my couch then and I was looking at myself from above. I recall feeling critical of the way I looked with a blank expression on my face. And then I got scared. And then Andrew Taylor. Hi, Linda. After my father died, I was living at home and a penny landed on my head, and it happened at least 5 times more for a period of a few months. And now, Ben RM3UC, quote, this is so interesting, Linda. When my godfather was dying in a hospice, I woke in the night very sad with him on my mind. I had his childhood teddy bear that I had collected from his house previously and placed it on my bed to feel close to him. I went back to sleep, and by now it was about 4 a.m. And then I dreamed of my godfather who kept saying, quote, you've got Fredbear, you've got Fredbear. The next morning, we learned that he had sadly passed away about 5 a.m. around the time of my dream. And we had to break the news to my godmother, who was in a care home. I then told my godmother, I hope you don't mind, but I took his teddy bear as a comfort to feel close to him without telling her about my dream. Oh, she said, you've got Fredbear. We call him that as in threadbare because he was so worn. I had no idea that Teddy had that name, and that was proof to me that my beloved godfather had come to say goodbye. And now, at Lorena0242, quote, I am new to your incredible channel. I am from Mexico City. I lost my father 2 years ago when he passed away. I had a strange but comfortable experience after the funeral in the early morning. I dreamed that I was in a place like a temple, and in its four corners there were stairs, and in the middle a patio. I was at the top of the stairs with another person, but she spoke to me by telepathy and told me why I was crying, that I should stop doing it because of my father, that he was in a better place, and that he was fine, and that I should not continue crying, and that I should be calm. And Lorena continued, I do believe that there are energies and that the universe gives us signs of its existence and beings that have no explanation. Best regards, your work is magnificent and I have great respect for you. Best regards from here in Mexico. And after that came a cut from Minnie Taylor, 7282, quote, you ask about near-death experience or out-of-body experiences. Several years ago, I had a very strange dream that I have not had the likes of since in this dream. It starts out that I am standing on a kind of knoll, a hill, where there is very short, dry grass all around. My husband at the time is standing next to me, and we are both fully clothed in normal clothes. And I look around and I see some other people there, which I do not know. And suddenly I look up and I see this large, round, silver craft above us in the sky, perhaps 100 to 200 feet right above us. It made no noise, but has a kind of energy coming from it. Suddenly, I feel myself being levitated up into this craft. Next, I am standing inside this craft in a room. The room does not seem to have any windows and no sharp corners. I estimate its size to be about 15 by 20 in circumference. It is all one color, a sort of whitish look. And as I am looking around, these two beings approach me. They look like two older humans. One is a female and the other is a male. They are both wearing these white, dress-like clothing. It covers their whole body and is very loose except on their arms. It covers their arms down to their wrists and is tight-fitting. It has a huge collar that comes up to their chins and goes over their front. The female has long hair that is grayish and is on top of her head like a beehive hairdo. The male has short gray hair with some balding, and they look to be around 5 foot 5 inches in height, maybe a little taller. As I am looking at them, they come over to me and I hear the female say, you are here to learn, and this will help you. She does not use her mouth to speak, but I hear it in my head. I then go sit on a sort of cot, which has a white pad on it. It's up against a wall, and I put my legs on the pad, sitting upright. The female then touches the center of my forehead with her finger, and at the same time says to me, quote, this will help you, close quote. I then slowly float my top part of my body back onto the cot. I am fully clothed. I am still on the cot, but I feel like I am in another place. I then see myself as another person, a young woman in another life. I go through that life, seeing my family, husband, children, and friends, right up to my death in that life. I died at a young age from a gunshot wound. I also saw where you go after you die. While I was reviewing that life, I was also experiencing the feelings I felt while living that life. The happiness and sadness I felt as that person, and I could see how my death made others so sad too. At that point, I woke up from the dream in my bedroom. I had this lucid dream over 30 years ago, but when I think about it, it seems like yesterday because The details and what I learned are still fresh in my mind. I have had many more lucid dreams since this one, and this was not the first one I have had. What I was shown was how we live and then pass on and then go on to repeat it again. That those we have lived with before may be living with us now in some way or not. I did find it to be helpful to me in understanding the reincarnation process. And I received in my email on March 27th, 2025, a mysterious, beautiful image, along with a heartfelt letter to me, Linda, that began, quote, "A beautiful morning to you. I really enjoyed your shows this past few weeks with Dan Drayson and the subject of the afterlife. I wasn't able to listen live last night or to share in the chat, so I wanted to share this with you after listening to the show this morning. It was about 30 plus years ago. I had my own NDE, near-death experience, that I will never forget. I had taken bee pollen as a remedy for seasonal allergies and had such a severe reaction to it that I went into anaphylactic shock. I lost consciousness and was then out of my body and floating in this beautiful light of pastel pink, blue, and white. I was surrounded by many light beings, that is to say, they had an outline of a body shape, but no other discernible features. I heard their voices in my mind telling me that, quote, it wasn't time for me to be there yet, close quote. But I wanted to stay longer. The next thing I knew, I was back in my body. After that, I have never been fearful of the death process. I was also getting this message in my mind as you spoke about the frustration with the delay on disclosure by the government that we are not alone. Though that acknowledgement would be a great boost to getting the truth out there for some, those of us who know and are no longer wary of speaking of their own experiences, that we may actually carry as much weight as an announcement from the government or authorities. Just like you shared your story of your experiences as a child, Linda, going to sleep at night and leaving your body to follow the light. I'm sure that sharing that story was more profound to others and encouraged them to also want to share theirs. Thank you for the work you and your team continue to do after all these years. Darla Green, and I am so glad to hear these heartfelt words from so many of you, and would like to turn to Ian in England now for more of your own thoughts and experiences, and to say to you genuinely, may the thought that dwells in the light protect all of us forever. Thank you for being there tonight in the share of what I cherish, these texts and emails and chats. And sorry about the technical confusion at the top, but we are human. And Brad will cut it off, it will be gone, and we'll have the clean program. And right now, I would like to turn to my dear, dear friend and colleague in England, Ian Halling, to pick up, Ian, what I'm hoping that we can do for the rest of the Earthfiles YouTube tonight is to encourage people that this is a safe zone, that they can talk about interactions with other beings, with things that come through the ceiling, whatever it is, and that we could start tonight genuinely and honestly sharing perhaps more about these amazing events in my life, your life, and that we need to understand more deeply what we are, what the relationship truly is to the soul universe, should we call it, and that I'm now going to turn it over to you, dear Ian, for people who have been already responding in the chat to experiences that were perhaps provoked again thinking about by tonight.
Linda, thank you. I've got, first of all, people are interested in the developments of the reports of the scientists and the Italian team and their findings below the pyramids. And that's obviously set the internet alight as well, with people from Piers Morgan, the Joe Rogan show, and
Ian, if this is all real, and I have had private discussions with people who say it is, it completely almost rewrites a big part of Earth history. It's that important, I think. And that the very fact that it's having such a difficult birth, that the scientists are not commenting because there are people attacking them, and that I will be here maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 shows in a row if we can get the science, the scientists backing it up, and that we know for a fact that something hundreds of times bigger than Giza and the big pyramids and the Sphinx is underground, and that the underground creation might possibly have been done by a water source that long ago went down underneath all of those sands, and that may have been a carving tool. It's not known, but I have heard that this is vast and it's real. And it was only 2 weeks ago that everybody was saying, what is this on the web? What are these blue cylinders? Why are people attacking it? I think it is because it is extremely important, and that we're going to start hearing from more and more actual scientists, and that it may be one of the new truths that comes on this earth at this very special time of 2025 going forward to 2030, as I understand it, and that the whole importance of our moving into truth about everything about the pyramids and the other cultures, truth about all of the extraterrestrial intelligences that have been here on our planet, in our solar system. That it is just vast, the differences between what we have been told and what we have not been told. And this could be, from my point of view, a very exciting time in the timeline if everything will move toward telling the whole truth. And Homo sapiens sapien could then perhaps begin to live and evolve with tremendously different knowledge, in which they would look at fellow Homo sapien human beings, as the Greeks always said we must. Thank you, fellow human being. We can share this planet all together without war, violence, and perpetual death. And that is what I hope happens. Go ahead, Ian.
Yeah, Linda, one of my first thoughts when I first heard of this was I remembered back to the Black Pyramid in Alaska, and that's referenced by Wayne Elliott tonight in the chat.
Yeah.
Black Pyramid in Alaska is a power plant, so this discovery only adds to the idea that these pyramids are the same. Now, I think the original quote was that the Black Pyramid may be able to generate enough power to power all of Alaska. Wasn't that the quote that we had when we did our investigation on that one?
That's right. And that was from a military-related source who knew that it's called the Dark Pyramid. And for those of you who may not be familiar, I have been, in addition to everything else, I have been producing Earthfiles.com going back to almost 1999, somewhere in there. And that one of the big surprises that evolved into this huge dark pyramid story, I was in Göbekli Tepe in June of 2012, and it was an extraordinary experience at so many levels. I got home, and I'm not kidding, I walked into my office coming back from Göbekli Tepe, And the phone is ringing, and it turned out to be a man who had served in Fort Richardson in Alaska. And he said, I have had experiences around pyramid and a UFO issue, and I would very much like to talk with you. And that began a friendship and interviews that evolved into the huge dark pyramid, which if you go to earthfiles.com and in the search bar, just type in dark pyramid, and they're fascinating, one of the most fascinating subjects in addition to, and maybe built by extraterrestrials that I have been trying to understand for the last half century, along with everything ranging from animal mutilations to human abductions, code, binary, which languages do what. And right now, in the beginning of April 2025, it's as if, wouldn't you say, Ian, it's like this, the whole incredible Egyptian story of extraterrestrials and ancient archaeology and the making of these amazing pyramids, and then probably having the ability to have electrical power, and the power underneath the Khafre pyramid, which now might be extraterrestrial technology, and governments may want that to continue to be suppressed, and that might be why this is so confusing. That something comes out with the SAR data and scientists who are saying behind the scenes that this is real, and something else is pushing against it. And that's been the story of UFOs, dark pyramids, right from the beginning. So maybe this is a signal that we're finally going to start getting more facts and truth. Go ahead, Ian.
Yeah, this may be the breakthrough. The R. Elizabeth in the chat tonight says, thank you, Linda and Ian. Do you think that the information retrieved from Egypt will be censored? They're already trying to debunk it. Well, people are trying to debunk it. They're obviously trying to get to the bottom of what it's all about. This is new technology, but these scientists are quite well respected in their fields, and they're using a different type of technology that uses this Doppler effect.
That's right.
I'm wondering as well, and a few other people are wondering, is it just that one pyramid that they've done the research on, or does this suggest that these structures may be under all of the pyramids in Egypt, and maybe even in the pyramids in South America, Central America, and elsewhere?
That around the whole planet Earth, from my point of view of things I have been told off the record, there has been an entire grid system, not necessarily even on the surface. The dark pyramid in Alaska is underground. And that the whole point here is that talented, respected scientists, they are saying this is real, even if they are saying it to people off the record, meaning not in front of a TV camera now, but they have said this to people who have told me. They're saying this is real, this is going to be a really big deal, and that the pushback is motivated by a peculiar desire, I guess, to control history. And controlling history, you have to, as far as I'm concerned, and so many people I've talked to who have firsthand knowledge, real history having to do with Egypt and Mesopotamia and beyond involves the presence of extraterrestrial biological entities with its artificial intelligence, all mixed, and whether or not they ever lived on the surface or went inside the Earth or inside of Ganymede, inside of our moon, inside of Mars and beyond. We have had extraterrestrial interactions on this planet, in this solar system, for I think it's at least 270 million years, and possibly into close to 1 billion or more. if we could just be told the truth. And right now, I take my hat off to the Italian scientists and the people who are also working with them, trying to, that they are trying to get everything in place, and then let's hope that they do a full-bore press conference with whatever information that they now have gleaned from that SAR, the SAR, which is like a Doppler with frequencies. It's various frequencies that go down, and then when they come up, they're showing in different patterns that are quite detailed. So let's hope is in this time of what seems like chaos on Earth, that maybe we will begin to have good stories open up with positive aspects. But we can't ignore what might be negative, what might be a threat. That's part of having consciousness in this universe, because they both exist, it seems, at all times along lines of time. And as these wonderful people sending me all of these chats, and this was just a small portion, the whole idea of time and what exists out of time, what exists inside of time throughout infinity, it is one of the keys to becoming an evolving and standing up mature consciousness that understands E equals mc squared and a whole lot of other areas of physics, that this is a different universe than we thought once upon a time. And the headlines that I mentioned last week, quote, scientists discovered something kind of alarming, the universe shouldn't actually exist. We are in a time of such great, and I hope, change that can be reported everywhere. And now I'm going to throw it back to you guys, anybody who has had any similar experiences to the chat and the people, or anything else, and then your own unique experiences. Let's go through Ian now for the remainder. Thank you, dear Ian.
Okay, Lily, yeah, I just wanted to mention about a few people sharing their experiences. We're covering a lot of aspects here, but I want to repeat what you said about the drones, about the drones still going on. You and I discussed this earlier on the phone,
Right.
and we know that we've already got some really good videos, and we're welcoming anyone else who has any of these mysterious drones, as they're called, or UAPs, or whatever. Please keep sending them to us at earthfiles@earthfiles.com and ian@earthfiles.com. And we'd like to hear some more experiences so we can bring those forward.
And the very fact that our government is not standing on we're going to tell you at least what we know, ground, and say X, Y in New York was X, B in Oregon was something else. Meaning, when Lou Elizondo said that this is really opening up a whole other issue, what has the ability, the technology to do what these drones have been doing? Because it's not something that humans can do in some of these cases.
Yeah, and I'm just looking again at the comments tonight, and people are engaged with this, and they're talking about, Gabriel, for example, says, Linda, the military uses SAR and other advanced sensors. They must know about the buried sites around the world.
Yes.
Most wars in ancient lands are with lost histories.
Yes.
And that's it, I think, is the lost histories. One of the things about the pyramids, even though they're built with natural resources and stones and things like that, although we know that the Egyptian pyramids were apparently smooth and perhaps in a golden color or finished with something in a gold finish originally, but it's the celestial alignment that is so precise with all of these ancient sites that makes it so interesting, as though there is something else to it, something that is so important.
I would be so interested to hear from any of our audience tonight about if you have stood in the big Giza pyramid and been in the king's chamber I had an extraordinary experience there, and I have met people who also have had extraordinary experiences, and boiled down about 30 minutes of my being able to ask and stand by myself, no one else around. Everybody was out on the grounds, and I asked specifically, could I please stand in the king's chamber? And there was something in me that requested a very specific place, like if the sarcophagus is here, something was drawing me up about probably 15 feet, 20 feet, 15 feet from there. And I just was following, like something taking a hold of me and putting me there. And when I stood there, immediately, it was like the frequency everywhere else was completely different than at this point where I am sort of placed. And I don't really have an objective idea of how long I was standing there in sort of awe of what I was feeling. And then suddenly, it was like a thought voice, like my thought voice, but I guess seeded by something. And it said, the purpose of this pyramid is to receive energy. And at that time, that would have been somewhere in the 1980s, I had, it was a completely different time. And I've often thought, why would the receiving of energy into the space, the king's chamber, and the empty spaces of the big pyramid, why would that be the immediate thing that evolved when I was somehow moved? And I have thought about that and felt that energy 1,000 times since then, as if it is now in my mind, in my energy, in a way that when I go to it, I somehow feel comforted if there's chaos. How many of you have had an experience where you went someplace with the idea of investigating, and then something like that happens?
Well, we'll ask the audience and see if they can interact. Whisper of Love, and thank you for this super chat there, Whisper of Love. I'm going to acknowledge the other super chats as well. We've got Moonbird, Different Sage, and
hi, you guys.
Yeah, and Mark as well. Whisper of Love says, would you go back to Egypt again if you had an opportunity, Linda? And what would you do? Would you do anything else in the pyramids?
I have always wanted to go back. I had many more experiences there. It was as if, in some of them, that I was on Earth, but I was walking, touching a place that I had lived in long ago. It filled me up in many, many ways. And it also led me to feel that there was so much about the time of Egypt and Mesopotamia when it was the dominant presence, the dominant consciousness on this planet. And that we have certain lenses that we have looked at Egypt, that world, that have come in books and videos and movies. And that one lens piece is like this much. And there was the sense of like movies running through my mind's eye, as if I were seeing places that I had been, that I had walked. It was amazing. It was absolutely incredible. And it was not frightening at all. I actually felt that this is a natural form of communication. Why do not all Homo sapiens have telepathic, where you run movies, sound, feel, temperature in a place here, and it's way faster than words? But I'm also not closing down that if we have a life in another planet, another solar system, another dimension, another universe, wherever it is. And a part of the soul has the ability to retain from experience to experience. It seems so grounded in truth to me after there are many, many things that I have experienced along those lines and along the lines in these chats. And I always feel, why is there a disconnect between humans being able to experience all of this and not want to kill each other? And that is the big puzzle. It, to me, is the biggest puzzle. And that if the ETs, in a variety of motivations, have anything to do with Homo sapien being somewhat limited in certain relationships with them and other forces, why? So it isn't like we are open to exactly what the relationship is between our soul, which may be a plasma, our bodies, tissues and fluids, and connecting directly through the consciousness of this universe, which is what the Pentagon says, that the consciousness is energy. Energy cannot be destroyed, and therefore reincarnation, most likely in some form, is real. Okay, Ian, I'm going to throw this back to you, and question or comment?
Yes, Linda, going back to our previous broadcast about the CIA doing this remote viewing study and the information coming out about the reincarnation, etc. Victoria Schoenberger says, can the CIA recognize the same person throughout different incarnations? And do they try to control that same person across different incarnations?
I've heard that question before. I remember a night back in Philadelphia with some friends who were very much involved with UFOs, and that was basically one of the subjects that we talked about. It is so intriguing. What is your own reaction?
Well, I've read several books on this that mention the sort of thing. I mean, behind all of this is perhaps a deep military study which has been going on, studying these people with these special abilities, and a very keen interest in taking control and using the control to perhaps control another person or control their thoughts or have some control over someone, and perhaps look for a marker. We've talked about this before, about the markers that are probably visible using some technology or some ability in people who have UFO experiences.
But I wonder why the messengers of deception always seems to be a frequency there in the relationship of Earth to extraterrestrials. Messengers of Deception being a famous book. Jacques Vallée had always talked also about a control system, that we're on a planet that is a control system. Why? When you start getting to these questions, you're getting closer, I think, to the peculiarities, to use that nice word, of what is happening between humans and a variety of non-humans, including abductions and cattle mutilations, animal mutilations, manipulation by a lot of ways. Why is there manipulation? But there also seems to be an encouragement by other forces through history for us to stand independent and do our own thinking, our own work, and our own building. And we're at a confusing place now if there is so much deception that even those that are positive and come with good souls can't be straightforward. So that, to me, is one of the biggest puzzles, and always has been, about the entire UFO phenomena. Go ahead.
I've got Sarah Teskey says, what does Linda think of entities down there in inverted commas, hibernation. That's just talking about what we've come to realize is some of these extraterrestrials might actually be what they call ultra-terrestrials or crypto-terrestrials, where they're actually part of or living or hibernated or encompassed somehow within the earth, and maybe even within these hidden structures or cities below the pyramids.
Well, I can add from December of 1999 and emphasize, I've told this story before. It was when a man was retiring from the Defense Intelligence Agency after 33 years of working exclusively on UFO ET matters. And he went to a man who worked for the World Bank who knew me. The World Bank man had come to conferences and talked to me about UFOs and ETs quite frankly and honestly, as people did back in the 80s and the 90s. If you had a discussion that was not being recorded and that it would be private, that it was in that context. And the question of, Linda, I have been told and shown documents that would go back to 270 million years. And they are histories about competing extraterrestrial civilizations in our solar system, in Earth, where there is competition for the planet or the solar system and tremendous amounts of manipulation. And the manipulation, shape-shifting, deception is the modus operandi of these various groups. And I remember that he said, by now, which would have been, that discussion would have been somewhere in the early, probably early 80s, somewhere in there, that he said, I can tell you from what I worked on that we have at least 3 competing extraterrestrial groups that have been inhabiting this planet and this solar system for at least 270 million years. And they fight with each other. And he said, not only do they fight with each other and they fight for control, that one group will choose to go down through the ocean waters, down through the bottom of the oceans, continuing down into the massive caverns that we have at the center of this earth that most people don't understand at all. And that's where they will be. They're not going to be living up here in the surface. They have these deep, deep below the ocean seas and lakes in which they have been. They come and go, but they're big bases and humans have not been involved or aware. Okay, so that's the one that goes down through the oceans and below the basins of the bottom. Another one is the Greys like to be inside of mountains, things that have granite and certain kinds of rocks, and they also will go down below a mountain and do a base there. And that the reptilians, which are always in a triangular conflict with the tall whites and Nordics, the Greys, the reptiles, always in a triangular conflict, that the reptiles have always occupied the lands deep below what we would call Mesopotamia, that they like hot heat. Well, if you just start thinking about that characterization and then think about what's happening today and how our government has known, as I've been told, and Bob Wood, Dr. Bob Wood, aerospace engineer, and his son Ryan, and others, we were told that World War II was an extraterrestrial war fought through human bodies. And I interviewed a man for 5 hours about that, William Mills Tompkins, and he completely confirmed. But we live on a planet where proof to the current social interactions and political interactions and business interactions and money interactions may say either that they don't believe it or it's true but don't talk about it, or if we're going to go that direction, we need to have more explanation. But I can say to you right now that those three areas inside of mountains, deep down below the bottoms of the oceans and seas, and underneath the big deserts that are hot, that at least 3 extraterrestrial civilizations have competed with each other on this planet for at least 270 million years. That he asserted more than once. So our current present is so different because once we know for a fact what is under the pyramids and the Sphinx in Cairo. Why was it built, if it is? And why have forces worked so hard to prevent surface humans from learning about what the pyramids and all of the Mesopotamian cultures in that area? So much has been sort of hidden or suppressed. So I'm anti-suppression, anti-hiding. I think that you need to live for the truth to be 24/7, 360, everywhere. Now, Ian, I went a little longer because we had that one technical thing at the top, but if you have one really good question, throw it out there and you answer this one.
Well, we thank you, Linda. We've got Tom the Man TV talking again about some of his experiences, and he said he even got chills when we mentioned about the control factor. Let's say the CIA's examination of seeing if they can control people, or using these techniques, psychic abilities, or advanced techniques to look into people's thoughts or memories. He says that he has dreams of himself in a mirror, but the odd thing was the mirror image of me would step out of the mirror and we were facing each other. I often thought of him as a brother. Now, he says that he'd like to discuss the topic of dreams in a future program, and a lot of people's experiences actually start off with them believing it's a dream, as we've mentioned, and we brought forward some of those experiences tonight, that these are and people always say, it was such a lucid dream, I had such a good dream about it. But this seems to me like it may be an experience of a clone encounter. Back to you on that one.
Well, and because I have had strange things happen to me in a crop circle, there was clearly something communicating to me. It didn't have a human voice. I wasn't seeing a thing. It was a presence. The presence was in the crop circle field. It was strong. And that the words that I've never forgotten were, life on this earth is not guaranteed. Almost at that cadence, like that. And I remember being just stopped, like completely everything. I mean, it was, and I sense that it was not a dangerous intelligence. I think it was consciousness, intelligence, that we have the potential, we humans, with our souls, have the potential to link into in a closer way than sometimes we do. But I was left with it was like a warning, but in the warning was, we are trying to help you. And I think there are a lot of people in the abduction syndrome that I know now in 2025 on Earth, and that they would agree that there is that feeling of, we watch you, we help you, we may have started you, and this is your planet and you have to live it, but that they have some other vested interest. That's the messengers of deception question. And the government people of various types that I've met will say, Linda, we can't open this up, it's too complicated. It threatens blang, bang, bang. And I don't think that's true. I think we are getting to a point where most of humans, in any language, any country, we all know that there is so much lying for money, deception at a political level, all kinds of levels. And that we are definitely strengthened by everything that has gone by in the past, to being able to hear all of the truth and absorb and be able to take it into our science and our evolution of moving out into space. Once there's a colony on Mars, why couldn't everybody on Mars who's going to live with, I guess Elon Musk is going to make that possible, that, okay, we came from Earth. We ended up on the moon. It's happening everywhere in this entire huge universe. I find it exciting. I really do. And there's lots of intrigue and there are lots of contradictions. But if you concentrate your mind and your thought and your energy on the thought that dwells in the light, and you get one of those movies of more light coming into you, it gives me hope. It really does give me hope that out of all of this, the soul recycling, the relationship between dimensions, it's all someday going to be something that humans will have a lot of truth and facts about. I believe that. Well, in the meantime, coming together with you guys on Wednesday nights, it's a special two-way. Thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you for getting our subscriptions now up close to 286,000. And for those of you who will be going to Contact in the Desert and any other conferences, I'm finally getting my schedule organized, and I'm planning to be at Contact in the Desert. I had a conflict that was important and family related, and I hope we'll all see each other there and continue the dialogue with, hopefully, Lou Elizondo being correct, that maybe greater than the last 7 months, that in this year of 2025, maybe they really are going to start telling us some truths. I know that I have been telling all of you the facts as I get them, the truth as I can understand them. And hopefully that will continue in the rest of 2025 and beyond. Big agape hug, you guys, to everyone. We are fellow beings.
Turn on closed captions for YouTube videos by clicking the white CC button on the lower right. The default language for Linda's videos is English. If you would like to see the captions in another language, click on the white settings button next to the CC button. Select Subtitles CC
I say, you want to get a comb?
and then
And they
select
both
Auto
come
Translate.
almost running, and I don't have to put them
Select a
any place
language,
or, bind them anywhere. They love
and the
to
captions will
have
now
their
appear
hair
in that language.
sort of gone through, and they will hold their heads. I never had a cat do that before. And they'll pull against the comb, helping me get out snarls. And I think it's the best they've ever been.